Good evening, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, Alka, I can hear you nice and fine.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so Alka, congratulations first. You found the merit list. Yes, congratulations.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay, so Alka, this interview, sort of the purpose of the interview is to guide, future aspirant with regard to law optional. So I will be asking you a series of questions, sticking to the law optional, nothing else. Okay, and
Yes,
maybe a
sir.
little bit, overlapping with the GS subject and how did you handle it? Okay. Okay,
Yes, sir.
let's start with your introduction. Tell me about yourself.
My name is Alka Yadav. I have secured All India rank 386 in the UPSC Civil Services Exam 2022. So shall I tell about the basic education as well? So I've completed my primary and secondary education from the three different Kendriya Vidyalayas. And then I went for law graduation in ILS Law College, Pune. And I passed out in 2019. Since then, I've been preparing for civil services, and I gave 4 attempts. I had not been able to clear prelims in the first three. 2022 was the first attempt when I cleared prelims, then mains, and then rank 386.
So this, sort of it is your first time giving mains and you cleared it, right?
Yes, sir.
It means you had a very good writing skill. Just because of prelims, you were unable to make it. Okay, no problem. Okay, so let me start with the constitutional law. Alka, how do you prepare for constitutional law? I mean, what
So
are
for
the resources that you referred? What are the tactics that you followed? Any tips with regard to specifically regard to constitutional law?
So for constitutional law, the BEAR Act, of course, has been the main guide throughout. Then I had detailed notes, the market notes that are generally available, and Lakshmi Kant was there to assist. Thirdly, sir, I used to keep a note of all the important judgments, the judgments that had been there in the news, or the landmark judgments, and any developments over them had been there. So an extra technique that I had in constitutional law was diagrams. I had a few, like I had a booklet of important diagrams where I either have the golden triangle wala diagram, or um, weighing fundamental rights and DPSPs, or showing the connection between different sections or parts of the constitution. So I guess that was one different thing that I had. That was my personal addition to the preparation.
Good. Now, what about the administrative law? I mean, it is small, but sometime in whole semester you study those 4 topics, right? So how
Yes,
do
sir.
you
Yes. So for administrative law, the thing is, because there are only 4 or 5 topics and it very specifically mentioned in the syllabus, what I did was I had this book. I can't remember the author, sir. Very popular author. It's a very known book. I can't remember the author. So
Sathe?
yes, sir.
Sathe. Oh,
Sathe, I believe, sir, not Sathe. I can't remember, sir. I'll have to recheck.
yes.
Yeah, so what I did was I took the keywords from the syllabus mentioned by the UPSC, and I made proper notes of those topics, and I consolidated administrative law within 10, 11 pages with
Okay.
important judgments. And yes, so for administrative law, I only had to read those 10, 11 pages. That's it.
That was sufficient to answer all the questions.
That was more than sufficient, sir. I was very well able to answer. The administrative law was never a problem.
Okay. So do send me those notes, right? I will give to this. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Now let us come to the this part B of the paper one, that is your international law. So how did you study international law? Syllabus seems to be quite vast. Questions are, however, very generic in nature. So how
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So for basic static topics, I had S.K. Kapoor ka this shortened version of S.K. Kapoor, and I was by hearting the whole book. For other topics, sir, which are a little dynamic in nature, for example, if you talk about the nuclear, this thing, international,
proliferation?
yeah, all of that part, humanitarian law and developments in humanitarian law, what I was doing was I would take individual topic from the syllabus. For example, let's say international humanitarian law. I would refer to S.K. Kapoor for basic statics. However, I would additionally add the current affairs and current happenings, or any current ICJ judgment if that has come up, or any recent incident. For example, Russia Ukraine came up, or Afghanistan Taliban issue came up. So I would make notes of those international topics which seem a little dynamic in nature, which would not, it would not be sufficient to just give details ki, acha, according to Stark, or according to um, Austin, this is what the definition
So
stands.
the news item that I regularly sent in the group, I think that would have a very added advantage to that. That's good. Okay, so what about the next, that is your paper 2, law of crime? It is very static, but how did you go about it?
So paper 2, I of course refer to the IPC, the Bear Act, and the contract Bear Acts and all of that. Paper 2, sir, two things very importantly. One thing is the previous year papers in the paper 2, because since there's so much to prepare and you can't draw a boundary as to how much weightage should be given to law of contracts or law of torts or law of crimes. So a good guide works is the previous year papers. And if you're done with, let's say, previous 10, not 10, but 7, 8 years, you will probably be familiar with 70-80% of the question paper in the real exam. And secondly, so for contemporary legal developments, I solely refer to your notes. Your group, sir, de facto law had released these booklets of CLD, because CLD is something that we had absolutely no idea how to prepare. That's how I came in contact with de facto law also. So I had only referred to the booklets.
Okay, that was sufficient. That was sufficient.
That was more than sufficient, sir. It was.
Now, what about the contract law? Because there are certain topics which is a sort of a semester exam in itself that comes from those topics: sales of goods, these negotiable instruments, or the partnership. How did you sort of concise it?
So law of contracts in case of law was my own notes. I took the Bear Act, and when we were in college in Pune University, we used to refer to these two writers. Like, they're not very like acceptable by the teachers, but like this Pathan's notes and Jhab notes, they're very popular. So on the same lines as Dukki in Delhi, I guess.
Okay.
Yes,
So
so it's
similar to the,
somewhat similar to that. So what I did was, because there's a little barrier, because they teach you as to how to write an exam in university, and while you're writing for UPSC, it differs a little. So what I did was, I referred to those books, but I made my own notes. Since I had 4 years, sir, it was quite possible for me. I don't know how it will work out for people who only have 1 year or 2 years, but yeah.
So you did not travel to Delhi. I think you remained in Pune, right?
So I remained in Prayagraj, because I
Achha,
belong to Kanpur. Yes, I belong to Kanpur. So I was preparing from Prayagraj. So I remained in Prayagraj and I prepared. Yes, sir, from here itself.
That's good, The students who are watching, and if they want to remain at home and prepare, that can also be done, right? No need
Yes.
to, yes.
And no need to travel to Delhi.
Yeah, no need to that expense per month. Okay. Now let us come to the normal questions, right? Like, did you prepared both law optional and GS paper in individual silos, or you sort of mixed them, or some overlapping areas you studied together? What was your strategy with regard to that?
So for law optional, especially, I think if we keep the preparation a little different from GS, it works. At least that's how it worked for me, because law is very technical in nature. So when we're studying GS, for example, when you're studying social justice or governance, you can make vague statements. You can be like, the need of the hour is that this should be done or that should be done. But you can't go that way in law. For law, you need to have case laws, you need to have sections, you need to have something substantial which has either happened in the legal system or legal process, which can be used to substantiate your argument. So when you're preparing for law optional, it's always a good idea to make sure that you are sticking to the details. If you're mentioning a particular thing, for example, if you're mentioning that ICJ's jurisdiction has been helpful in framing international law, we must be able to cite at least 3-4 advisory judgments which have uh, developed the course of international law and things like that. So I believe that it should be kept a little different, because in GS papers, sometimes, I don't know if that is right to say or not, but sometimes you can make guesses. Sometimes you read a question and you can think, अच्छा ये लिख सकते हैं, या this can be work, कि मेरे को ये समझ में आ रहा है, ये लिख सकते हैं.
Sometimes, yeah, generic content might come.
Something like that. But that, I think, sir, doesn't work in law and should not be done in law, because it would not. It might just be disastrous to do that in law optional.
Very nicely you have summarized that. Okay, now as you have almost you self-prepared, right? My help was very little, right? So you totally relied on your own and you did it, right? So you must be, I mean, you will be a very good ideal in sort of that you required very least help and did by yourself, right? So what are the tips that you would like to give to the students? I mean, the candidates who want to prepare on their own?
Yes, sir. So there are 4 or 5 things that I think I would like to tell them. First is, do not underestimate the power of previous year questions. Sir, I was doing it on my own, but I think all of it, sir, 90% of my preparation in law optional,
Started
even
with
for
the same question.
what, sir?
No, that started 90% of preparation started with the previous year law question.
Yes, sir. And sir, it was amazingly helpful. Like I just have an example for the students. For example, IPR is very vast, sir, and I did not have IPR as my subject. But what I did was, I compiled all the previous year questions of IPR, and
I sent you that
I
also. I
sat up.
think that IPR also I sent the previous year paper. IPR also I sent you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. IPR was sent. Yes, sir. Sent to us.
After that, what you did?
So I compiled all the previous year papers and I wrote down proper model answers for them. And in the 2 hours gap after optional paper one, I was revising CLD. So I revised the previous year papers of IPR. And thankfully, a question in paper two was asked, which was not very similar to the previous year papers, but from what answers I had written for previous year papers, I could use 2, 3 case laws and at least write something. It was a 10 marker, and had I not compiled those previous year answers properly, the model answers, I might have just left that question, but I did not. And thankfully, sir, I've scored the best in optional paper two only. And I think the whole credit goes to the previous year questions. That's
Okay,
one
so
thing,
that
sir.
means the candidates should first start with the previous year paper, okay? And
Yes,
sort
sir.
of study build
Previous
up.
year papers.
Okay, and
Yes, sir.
after that,
Second, sir, a very important thing is when a person is analyzing previous year papers, for example, you've read question number 1, 2022, write it down on a paper and write a proper model answer. Don't be like, for example, if the question is cite the history of basic structure, doctrine or development, don't be like, हाँ ये तो पता है कि केशवानंद भारती मिनर्वा मिल्स एक IR को. Don't leave that. Write it properly. Make a flowchart. Write a complete answer, proper answer as you would write in the paper. How that would help you is, one, you have written one complete answer, what you're going to do in the real exam. Two, when you don't have time right before the paper, when you revise this while you're writing the real paper, you remember कि अच्छा flowchart वगैरह बना के लिखा जा सकता, because you've done that at your house. तो I think this is very important. What? Because ये बहुत casual attitude हो जाता है कि अच्छा ये तो आता है, ये medical insanity ये तो आता है, legal insanity लिख लेंगे. Don't do that. Get an A4 size sheet, write proper model answers for the previous year questions. Um,
and
Thirdly, sir, what's up? I'm sorry.
on the last third point you were making.
Yes, sir. So third point is take help if you're getting. For example, CLD, sir, I was preparing. I really need to mention this because CLD was something that I was very scared of. I was honestly very scared of, and I didn't know trial by media and RTI. It would have taken me months to compile notes. So if you're getting help from somewhere, and you can save your time before mains, get the help. Don't act like you're the smart, because I like my own notes, but I knew I did not have the capability to make laws for CLT. So when I got this chance, I took your notes, and it saved a lot of time for me. So if you're getting some help, some compilation that's helping you in your mains, take it, please. Don't be so stubborn with कि नहीं मेरे को अपने notes ही बनाने हैं and
Yeah,
that.
I know everything sort of stuff, right? And that is
Yes, sir.
okay. So that is good. Okay, so you have covered everything. Now, what about interview? What kind of question you got in interview, Alka?
Interview was, sir, great. Thankfully, I scored the best in the interview only. So
How much marks did you get?
there 200 in the interview. Yes, sir.
Oh, very good.
Um, Thank you, sir. Some law-related questions were very situational questions.
Like?
For example, there was one question. This question was, for example, you're a judge and the case comes to your court where there is no domestic legislation. What would you do? So this was one of the questions, to which I answered.
What you replied in that?
Yes, sir. So my answer was, the very first thing that I would do is I would keep in mind there's this Latin phrase, ex equo et bono, whatever is just and fair should be kept in mind. And secondly, I would look up to international conventions, because I had an example, Vishaka judgment. So I gave an example also, like how Supreme Court, when we did not have domestic legislation, it looked up to the International Convention for Protection of Women. That happened. Secondly, sir, awareness, because there was this one panelist, sir, I was not able to answer a single question, and I could see the disappointment on his face. But luckily, if because I was aware of all the recent Supreme Court developments. So luckily before closing it, he was like, "Acha, Alka, my last question is," it was 11th of May, my interview, and he's like, what are the two important that the Supreme Court is about to give two important judgments today? And what are those judgments? And thankfully, I knew it was Maharashtra case and the Delhi LG case, which was going to be released. And I think that's what saved me, because had that not been there, had I been blank on that, तो उनको लगता है कि इसको कुछ ही नहीं आता है.
The current affair भी पढ़ के नहीं आई.
Right. So that happened. That was all. And sir, there was one more thing which was related to law, I guess, but very situational tha ki, for example, if you're an advisor to Elon Musk, so whatever he's doing with Twitter, what else would you recommend? Like, what would you want to recommend?
Okay. So we have to
Yeah, so to which sir, I answered ki he should at least, because he's letting people post whatever they want, even if they're insensitive comments or anonymous people can post and there is no verification or recognition. So I would recommend that, since it's a social media platform, it should be responsible, and there should be verification. There should be some restriction on anonymous posting. So he's like, you are hindering freedom and expression. Chaube sir was there. Chaube sir was like, what will happen to the users? The users will fall down and he will fire you. Elon Musk is going to fire you if you advise him, something like that. And you've lost your job now. You're jobless now. So I was like, no, sir, when I'm making this argument, I'm going to substantiate with the fact that more and more countries are moving towards regulating social media platform. What is the point of having a lot of users from India if Indian government under the new IT guidelines bans Twitter, right? What are we going to do with the users from India? So if we allow some sort of self-regulation, we might be able to protect ourselves from the curve of the governments in the different countries. Like all the countries are coming up with new regulations. So things like that. So situational questions mostly, but related to law.
Okay. So your interview was very nice and totally revolving around law itself, right?
Yes, sir. Mostly law.
In fact, this is the today itself I took 4 toppers interview. All of them said the same thing. If you're a law graduate, right? Mostly the question was surrounding law itself, and all of
Law,
them.
yes, sir.
That is a good thing. Okay, so that winds up for today, Alka. Thank you very much for speaking to us, and hopefully
Yes,
next year you're not attempting. Yeah, we talked, right? So next to next year you attempt.
Next to next year. Yes,
so improve your rank, and hopefully within single digit you will get the rank next time. Okay, and write the test again. Okay? Write the whole test, all the 10 tests you next time write. Okay, and write it down, and after that definitely you will at least 30-40 marks improvement may be done in your answers. Okay, so next time hopefully we will talk again. Okay.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.